Hello, and on the gaming table today, we're taking a look at making better forest bases. So recently, as shown in another video, I upgraded my gaming table, and I mentioned there that it was time to make some new terrain. So that's one of the things I've been working on alongside painting some figures. Now, one of the things I wanted to improve were the bases that I use for forests and things like that, and also rough ground potentially in the games that I do. Up to this point, as you can see in this photo, I've just been using pieces of felt, which I know most people do when they're getting started with these things, just cut into some different shapes. And a couple of things I don't like about this, it just doesn't look as good as what I might be able to do. And also they're very fixed shapes. If I want a specific shape, I have to cut it or maybe overlap pieces. And yeah, anyway, there's a better way to do it. So what I decided to do was inspired by something I saw in someone else's video, actually. I thought about making some little bases, and the one I'd seen in the video was based around hexagons. So I started that way and started to do something here. Put on some filler, added a bit of sand, and then as I was doing this and started cutting up some smaller shapes, I'm thinking, if I'm just going to cut them up, why am I doing hexes, which are harder to do? Why don't I just do squares? So then I switched shapes and started to do squares as well. So both will go together. It's okay. I can use both. But anyway, so what I'm doing here, just taking the piece of plasticard, which is what this is based on, adding some filler just roughly over. It just gives it a bit of texture. Sprinkle on a little bit of sand and let all of that dry. After that, give it a coat of brown paint. Now, I'm using very watered down paint here and just kind of slapping it on, really, not worrying too much about where it goes. And it just naturally gives a lot of color variation like this, or shade variation, like you can see here. So this is not dry brushed or anything. This is just the paint going straight on. After that, I did go around and give them, I just made sure the edges were good as well with brown, and then I gave them a dry brush. And so here I'm just using a lighter color, using like a dark sand kind of color, just to give them a bit of a dry brush, tidy them up. If there's bits that don't look so good after I've done this, I'm just going to cover them up with flock and things in the next stage. And so as mentioned, the next stage is just applying some flock. Now I'm doing it, as you can see, over about maybe 70% of the area there with this kind of darker green flock and mixed in with a bit of building sand as well, which is the little stones you can see there. This just gives things a little bit of texture, but nothing sticking up too big. You can still put figures and trees on here without them falling over. And generally speaking, it just looks nice. So there we go. And they'll work both for forest bases and for rough ground, you know, with areas like this with no trees. So now my basic table can accommodate a bunch of forest bases here, which you can just kind of arrange to make different shapes based on what you have. Make any sort of shape of forest you want. Put your trees on top, and I think it looks pretty good, or at least a lot better than what I was using before. Okay. The other advantage with doing them like this, rather than making some sort of large, thick base with trees permanently mounted in it, is that all of these little bases will just stack up in a pile and can go in the shelf. And for me, space is at a premium, so this is a good way to store these things. I just stick all the bases together like this, chuck them on the shelf. When I want them, pull them out, lay them out, put the trees on top, we're good to go. So anyway, that's how I went about making some better forest bases. I think it does look quite a bit better for me than what I had before. So maybe this will give you a little bit of inspiration too. As mentioned, they could be forest bases, or they could just be areas of rough ground if those are part of the gaming rules you use. Just take the trees off and you've got rough ground as well. So I like the fact that I can use it for a couple of different things. Anyway, I hope you found it interesting. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again real soon.